Thank you. My name is Anthony Wagar, and I'm part of the environmental practice at Willis Towers Watson. We're a large multinational publicly traded company. We provide insurance and risk management services. I appreciate being here at Wharton and being part of this panel. As a sign of my appreciation, I do not have slides. Because my slides that I had originally prepared would have had these beautiful insurance policies with a lot of coverage, grants, and exclusions that we could have reviewed for the next 10 minutes or so. But you know, the common theme that I've been hearing throughout it is this sort of interplay of extreme weather events and risk management and how to address the changing risk and an acceptance of that risk. We've heard that in 2017, we had sort of a four-punch event that took place between Hurricane Harvey, Irma, Maria, and then the wildfires in California, which resulted in record-breaking losses. We've had hurricanes in the past, but they've been sort of like these one-off type of events. So I don't know if it's coincidence or if it's a result of this conference that Joanne had planned, but I think the timing's good to contemplate that. I think the one big takeaway that throughout the panels here, and including my own presentation, has to do with the fact that risk is changing and that the exposures are changing. So we kind of get caught up in this sort of traditional approach to risk, this traditional predictions of what our exposures are and what our risks are. I think what's been shown, at least in the past year, and then obviously previous years before that with some of the catastrophic events that we've experienced, it's really shown that we need to take a new, fresh look at our risk, to accept it, to acknowledge it, to prepare for it, and then ultimately, what can we do to change that in a positive way. So my expertise is more on environmental and pollution liability insurance, and I thought what I would do as a benefit here is to talk about war stories, real life scenarios that as an insurance broker representing clients and representing the insurance carriers in the middle, what those looked like. And I'm not going to be talking about the more traditional environmental exposures and risks, such as buried drums and historical contaminants or past disposal sins, if you will, because I think we're all familiar with that and intelligent to know what's going on with the environment. But I wanted to talk specifically about how extreme weather events have uncovered these new scenarios and these new type of losses that, as corporations, as homeowners, as just public citizens here, it's important to be aware of. So, and these are Willis Towers Watson scenarios that we've experienced with clients, which we've helped to sort of remedy. So I thought it was fair and give you some insight onto that. So, and this is not just with these past hurricanes. This goes back to Sandy and to other events where you had water levels rising, where you had extreme flooding, heavy winds, storm surges, things like that. So one of the things we observed is, of course, in industrial areas where you had some pre-existing contaminants or pollution conditions in the soils, we noticed that when the elevated water levels came in and it washed a lot of contaminants from particular properties downstream and ended up contaminating other properties. That's not something that you would typically be concerned with had everything been contained, had you not had a rise in water levels, had you not had storm surges and things like that, particularly along the shorelines. Another thing we noticed is that a lot of the sewerage authorities were not appropriately prepared to handle the increased volume of water. So you had untreated sewage going out of the system because they just could not handle the capacity. We had landfill breaches because you had essentially landslides at landfill disposal facilities and things like that. So that released a lot of contaminants into nearby properties. We had significant mold issues, which is not directly from the storm surge itself, but something that happened subsequent to the storm. When the water receded and the temperatures were hot, we had significant mold growth in indoor structures, which was, a lot of it was toxic mold, and it was pretty hefty in terms of costs. Another thing that we experienced, which I don't know the best way to describe it, but we had a plant outside of Houston, Texas, after Harvey, which had organic peroxides. They essentially manufactured these peroxides. Those peroxides needed to remain stable, and the way they kept those stable is by cooling them. When they shut down the power to anticipate the storm, unbeknownst to them, or maybe they should have predicted it, the organic peroxide started to destabilize. It started to extrude heat, and it turned into a very large chemical explosion, and it was pretty significant. So those are just some brief examples of non-traditional environmental pollution liability exposures that are a direct result of extreme weather events. So my point on all this, it all goes back to risk management, as some of the other panelists mentioned. My point on this is to say, we really have to start thinking about this. We really have to start preparing. We really have to start talking to our risk management departments and evaluate what our current exposures are to make sure that we're assessing our risk properly, to make sure we're being prepared. I don't think buying insurance is one of the remedies, but that's more of a reactive approach. I'd rather be more proactive to say, hey, we have this chemical plant that's so close to the shoreline. Is it properly situated, whether it's the 100-year plan, which we can debate, right, which I would agree with the opening comments about that. Like, what are the costs involved in that? Well, what are the costs by not doing it? So I think from that perspective, the big takeaways are acknowledge that the risks are changing drastically, have risk management in place and act on it. And then, of course, there's always what can you do personally and on a corporate level from the standpoint of sustainability and responsibility. So we've seen certainly more companies that are being more transparent with their environmental impacts. We've seen a higher level of scrutiny, whether it's in financial disclosures, in terms of what investors want to see. And I think if we walk away with anything here, we should just kind of take a step back and just say, the problem's real. We need to address it. Yes, there's money involved. Yes, there's socioeconomic issues involved, but burying our heads in the sand is not the solution, nor is it just to put money aside in escrow to deal with it.